Okay, hello again. Quick recap, Jamie King, Xexec. We're going to speak today about social recognition technologies and how social recognition can help drive some of your other HR strategic priorities and activities and agendas. And we're going to look at social recognition technology specifically, a little bit of focus on technology because of the nature of the day. Of course, recognition can be delivered in ways that don't actually touch technology at all, and we're actually going to come on to that a little bit as well. But the focus today will be very much on recognition strategies. So briefly, what is recognition? We're not really focusing on the definition of recognition today and all the do's and don'ts and hows and wherefores, etc. But it's worth having a look very quickly at a useful definition that we often use for recognition. So on the left here, we've broken it down into two channels, really. Recognition is the activity that you engage in order to, one, acknowledge exceptional performance, and to celebrate that exceptional performance perhaps as well. And two, to encourage specific values and behaviors through your recognition activity as well. What's interesting about this definition, which is why we think it's quite a useful definition, is that it focuses on two very different aspects of every organization. On the one hand, the first area, I think I've got a laser here, hang on. Yeah, there. The first area in bold here is about the employees themselves. So this is about making employees have a sense of engagement, of being respected, acknowledged, etc. And the second area is about the company. You want the company's values and behaviors and objectives and goals, etc., to be pushed to that employee base. Of course, the two are related, of course, but there's two sort of sides to the same concept within recognition, and it's useful to remember those two sides because it allows us to look at both the employee and the company. Recognition is something which cuts across all work activities. So recognition through either technology or non-technology, of course, is something which is involved in everything that's happening in the organization. It should be. It should be something that's happening in almost every aspect of your organization that has a nod towards recognition. So everything from team dynamics, manager meetings, the way that you engage in organizational hierarchies should all somehow pay attention to recognition. And therefore, we strongly believe that recognition is basically one of the key communication channels. It's one of the key channels for engaging employees. It's very different recognition to something like a salary sacrifice benefit program, for example, so cycle to work or childcare. Those sorts of schemes have a much narrower objective. So the idea behind salary sacrifice schemes, amongst others, but one of the core ideas is to save the employee money, for example, to save the company money as well, to make it easier to purchase certain things. In turn, of course, those things will have impacts on retention and engagement and loyalty, perhaps, but it's much narrower. We believe that recognition is much broader, as we say, cutting across all areas of work life. And because of that, it has a great opportunity, we think, to play a part in driving all those other areas in your work and company life, HR activities and schemes and programs and objectives, etc. So let's have a look at some of the key HR strategic priorities that you may be engaged with. We're going to look at a few, obviously not all of them. We're just going to look through these HR priorities and strategies and see how they link to recognition, how recognition can sometimes help. So here are an example. There are four that are mentioned on this screen. And we're mentioning them because they have a different type of relationship with recognition. We're actually not going to focus very much on these four, but it's worth mentioning them. So the first two, retention and engagement, so they're linked to recognition, we think, in a very causal way. If you get your recognition strategy right and it's successful, then we hope, and there's evidence to show this, we're not showing it, going through it all now, we can, if we want afterwards, we can go through some of those stats and market research, but there's evidence to suggest that if you get your recognition strategy right, then it will increase retention rates and engagement levels. Okay, so that's a sort of causal relationship between recognition and other areas that you're interested in the same way that many benefit schemes might do exactly the same. The second examples over here, bonus strategy, flexible and voluntary benefits, your total rewards strategy, etc. Again, they're linked, but in a more indirect way. More so not because they're a consequence of recognition, but rather because depending on how you implement recognition, how successful it's been, etc., how much recognition is actually increasing engagement levels in the organization, you might take a different view as to how to shape your other benefits. Because in totality, what your benefits are trying to do is something similar, engagement levels, loyalty, etc. And if you've got successful areas in one aspect, like recognition, it might help shape how you then define your reward strategy, your bonus strategy, flexible and voluntary benefits more generally. Okay, we're not focusing really on these, but I just wanted to show that there are HR priorities which are reflected in indirect ways as well. The ones that I wanted to focus on are some of the areas on this page over here. So if you look at the first three, they're more obviously linked to recognition, and some of you who have recognition portals will be more familiar with this. So core value promotion is an HR priority often, the idea that you want to promote, create awareness and education about your core values and actually to bring them into the day-to-day life of the employee. That is something which is more obviously perhaps linked to recognition, because recognition programs, generally speaking, tend to be set up such that every time you nominate someone for an award, if you've seen recognition programs before, you have to link it to, associate it with one of your core values. And then when that award is given to a nominee or an employee, it's done so in the form of a card or a certificate or something which, again, highlights the core value that their achievement is linked to. So these are more obvious ways in which awareness and the building of familiarity with core values can be pushed into the workplace through recognition. Briefly on the other two, talent management and performance management. Again, talent management a little bit more obvious as well. If you are collecting data through the management information reports in your recognition activity, and through the intelligent use and packaging up of that management information, going to the right people at the right times, it's quite easy to start using recognition activity as a part of your talent management overall agenda, in the sense that you're starting to see the rising stars in different departments for the different things that they're achieving, etc. So again, another nice example of how recognition can hook into another HR priority. Performance management, a little bit more questionable this, because people take performance management and treat performance management quite differently from one organization to another. But if you look at your general day-to-day performance management, which includes typically in any organization performance reviews, objectives, aims, management response, etc., and a monitoring of that day-to-day remit type of activity, that obviously has to do with performance of one time, your day-to-day remit. If you look at recognition, that's also related to performance. A different type of performance, it's true, it's more behavioral performance than day-to-day job, something that we often call above and beyond, etc., but it also has something to do with performance. So if one area has something to do with performance management, and recognition has something to do with performance, then you're entitled to ask the question, how should those two things come together? We've started to look at with some of the clients that we're working with in the same way that you have total reward statements, which is basically a statement of your full benefits, all the benefits that you have, which is more to do with monetary financial benefits. Also, we've started to look at total performance statements, which pulls together all of your performance in the performance management review realm and all of your performance in the recognition realm, and pulls those things together for statements for senior management and HR to look at, etc., and your colleagues. Okay, we can come back to these perhaps if you have more time. Just moving through some of the other areas here. Actually, these last four here, age, demographic strategy, flexible hours, learning, development, health and wellbeing, we're going to look at through different screens now as you move through. So as an example, again, health and demographics. You can see now, and we're all familiar with the changing shifts and patterns in demographics in our organizations. One of the changes comes from the arrival of something which is almost an animal in its own. So did I say animal? A demographic in its own right. The millennial. They're their own category because so much research has been done about millennials now, and that they have their own set of expectations, etc., and work ethics. Here's some interesting stats about millennials. 64% would rather make $40,000 a year at a job that they love than $100,000 at a job that they think is boring. 8 out of 10 think they deserve to be recognized more for their work. 42% want feedback every week. 58% expect employers to provide them with learning opportunities relevant to their job. 71% expecting to leave their company in the next 2 years are unhappy with how their leadership skills are being developed. And even the following is true. This is even more interesting. 88% want their co-workers to be their friends. That's quite nice. Yet 68% would sacrifice a friendship with a colleague if it meant getting a promotion. And this one. 34% would quit a job on the spot if their employer asked them to delete their Facebook page. Tremendous. And yet, 30% of executives give special attention to the particular wants and needs of millennials. Okay, so we know that the millennial phenomenon is something that has hit our organizations and needs to be looked at. But it's not just that end of the age spectrum, of course. There is evidence to suggest that by the year 2022, nearly a third of the workforce will be in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. So we have an aging population, and therefore an aging workforce as well. So what do these things mean for what is now being called an age strategy? And indeed, how should recognition play a part in any of this. Just before we move on to that, looking also at other work changes, work-life changes, home working and flexible hours is also on the increase. So the number of people now working from home has increased by a fifth over the last 10 years. The majority is still men, but the actual trend increases with women up by 35%. Again, that says something about the demographic makeup. Home workers and partial home workers are more likely to work in excess of their contracted hours. Okay, that's interesting now, because now we're starting to see that it's not just about time with home workers and flexible hours, but actually how it's impacting their behaviour at work. And so if you take all of that into mind for the age and demographic strategy as well, but also for the flexible hours piece, and you're building a recognition program and solution, you have an opportunity to make sure that it actually addresses some of these other areas that you're thinking through as well. Because recognition isn't just about giving someone an award, and that's the point that we're making today. It's about driving some of these other agendas. Look at the bottom 3 points here. Home workers are not visible as much, obviously they're at home. Therefore, you need extra effort to make them a part of the team or to join in with team recognition celebration moments. So if you've got a recognition strategy which celebrates team achievements or individual achievements, but your home workers aren't there, you need to give that obviously some thought. Home workers often express greater existing levels of job satisfaction. Well, that's interesting already, because sometimes recognition is put in place to address issues of job satisfaction, but if with that particular part of your employee base they already have high levels, what does that mean about the type of recognition program you need to implement? Home working and flexible hours are appreciated, so can become the award itself. I'm going to come back to that actually in a moment. But if we go back to the other areas that we were looking at as well about age and demographics, again, what it all tells us is that we need to implement different award schemes through different media, different awards choices, and for all of those different age groups and working practices. So for some, maybe this is the millennials, I don't know, it needs to be inventive, fun, instant, it needs to be mobile, it needs to involve chat and comms and social media, the rewards need to be more meaningful and tied in with what the millennials want, ticking off bucket list experiences, etc. perhaps. For others, it's more about family time and work-life balance and flexible hours as the rewards themselves. And we're going to see some of that now as we move into social recognition. I'm going to come back in a moment to learning and development and health and well-being, which I haven't yet mentioned. But before we do that, just a quick sidestep to remind ourselves about what social recognition is and how that works. So social recognition is the attempt to go beyond the actual nomination of an employee. So if I nominate my colleague John for an award, that's great. I know about it, John knows about it, and we're both perhaps very happy about it. But who else knows about it? Maybe no one. And the idea of social recognition, of course, is to socialize that, to make sure that many people know about it. And there are different ways of socializing recognition awards. One of the ways, and often the starting point of the socialization of recognition, is to use something along the lines which is often called a winner's wall. Something like this, the idea, or a leaderboard, sometimes people call it, the idea that the people who have been recognized here are somehow displayed and promoted and celebrated visually through different channels, etc., on the recognition portal itself. And then you might have the ability to send messages to these people as well. Congratulations, just saw you on the winners wall, etc. And that data of recent winners, back to the laser, can also be fed through other channels as well. So over here on a benefit, this is an example of a benefits portal where you're accessing all sorts of benefits, but it might also pull in some recent winners from your recognition activity. And it doesn't need to be internal systems. It could be through notifications to external channels as well, to corporate or even individual Twitter and Facebook pages, etc., or internally, again, through Yammer or other forms of social chat mechanisms that are running through the organization. So that's, broadly speaking, what social recognition is attempting to do. Of course, there's making it mobile and optimized as well, either through apps or mobile optimized sites so that you can use it on the go, which helps with that socialization. And now the big question is, how do we tie all of this in together? And we're going to focus on health and well-being and learning and development. I'm just taking a step here to see the time and be blinded. 6 minutes, fine. So if you look at health and well-being and learning and development as examples, again, of other HR priorities and strategic objectives, one of the ways in which you can push those priorities, health and wellbeing and learning and development in particular, is through awarding employees for those things. And this is often missed out of recognition programs. Recognition programs tend to be quite generic. They tend to reward people in line with your core values, so whatever they are. teamwork and being bold and trusted and challenging, etc. And they're therefore generic. The actual reward itself will be for something specific because the employee presumably did something specific, but it's linked to these generic values. So it's worth thinking about how you can actually reward people for things other than your core values in order to drive those other agendas and priorities. So maybe an organization can reward people, either formally or informally, for engaging in health and well-being activities or engaging in learning and development activities. You might want to set up formal reward programs for health and safety awards, if that's relevant to your organization, for healthy living awards, first aider awards. Again, someone joins or is participating in first aider courses, or participation incentives generally. So just in the way that insurance companies now will reduce your premium, etc. If you join the gym, then so because they're interested in obviously reducing their payouts, we're also interested in health and well-being, and therefore we include incentives and rewards or acknowledgements even, it doesn't need to be financial, for your participation in a range of health and well-being activities or indeed learning and development activities. So completion of training courses, for example, might result in some form of acknowledgement, particularly where it's involuntary. So, and this comes to the column on the right-hand side there, and this is often led by the manager. If the manager knows his team, and the manager happens to know there's no formal program for if you join a gym, you get a reward. If you join the fun run, you get a reward. But there might be opportunities where the manager can send some form of acknowledgement through a recognition program. It's almost definitely going to be non-financial in the form of a card or something, for when they know that someone started cycling to work or has joined the company sports team, or perhaps with the example at the bottom there, learning and development, has taken on some voluntary learning program. So if someone decides themselves to learn Spanish, now, they weren't eligible to do Spanish in the company, but they've decided to take it on themselves. They're learning Spanish in the evening, and you think that might even be useful for the organization, or they're doing advanced Excel or something there to promote themselves and the role that they have. Again, the manager maybe should have a mechanism through your recognition activity and solution to acknowledge that and to say, we think that's a really good thing that you're doing. So that's the first mechanism, to use awards themselves to promote those agendas. The second way is through the awards choices. This is like the flip side. So not rewarding people for engaging in health and well-being or learning and development, but using health and well-being and learning and development as examples for the rewards themselves. Normally, when someone performs a reward, performs some level of achievement in an organization, you want to give them a reward. It's either, we talk about non-financial awards, cards, certificates, etc. And we also talk about financial awards, which tends to be in the form of points or cash value, which accumulates over time, and then they get to spend those points and cash value in a catalogue of products or through some other mechanism. But again, maybe to promote and drive those other agendas, let the rewards themselves be something from a health and in line with health and well-being or learning and development. In other words, someone who you as the manager, you know, the person asked to do an advanced Excel course, but they're not eligible by company rules. They wanted to do a Photoshop course. They're not eligible. You realize it would be a good thing for them, but there's just no policy that allows you to have spent the budget on it. But there might be budget in recognition. So when that person has achieved something, let their award be that Excel course, let it be that Photoshop course, let it be for a really maybe high value, a high level reward, Employee of the Year, put them on that part-time MBA for 2 years, etc. Allow them to do the first aider training. We had a case where someone wanted to do first aider training. The company said we're only allowed to do 10 people a year, but they really wanted to do it. They got it instead through a recognition reward. Health and well-being, again, let the reward be a physical trainer for a month, gym membership for 6 months or a month. Buy them a Fitbit, get them some bike vouchers, whatever it is. And again, at the bottom, some other examples, stepping out of the two we've been looking at, supporting work-life balance, give them time off, come in late, go home early, take a long lunch, spend some time with your family, have a cleaner for a month, a chef for a night, whatever it is. So there's all sorts of ways of promoting. You can see here the other agendas that are being promoted by a careful selection of what your actual reward choices are. The third area, so we looked at before winners, something we called a winner's wall, which is where you start to visually represent and celebrate all of the people that have won things. The problem with winner's walls, we found, is that they tend to focus only on celebrating those people who have received an award that's been processed by your recognition platform. So if you have a nice piece of technology that processes the nominations and approvals for, Employee of the Month, or just some form of instant financial award or a peer-to-peer non-financial award, the system knows about it, so it's able to display the faces of the people who have been engaged, who have won those awards. That's great. But what about all the other sort of stuff that's happening in the organization? There's also good news that you also want to celebrate and push. And it's important to try and fit some of those into the winner walls as well. And examples are here. So this is an example of a scheme that we've done where fun run participants get their photos in as well. And in fact, when you click on their face, you can actually see them, the photo of them running over the finishing line or something like that, or first aiders again. So the opportunities to celebrate things beyond the obvious is the point, so that you can push those other agendas. And similarly, e-cards, obviously. Obviously, we send e-cards in recognition of performance, but e-cards should also touch other areas that you're trying to promote and push as well. So other special occasions, course completions, as we said before, having a new baby. I don't know how you have a non-new baby, but sorry you're leaving, etc., engagement, or even helping with diversity agendas with Happy Diwali, Happy Eid, so on and so forth. So all sorts of ways to make e-cards a bit more useful. The next area, of course, is with team awards. So team awards are obvious. That's an obvious way in which you can socialize the recognition. But very often team awards are just money. It's just everyone in the team gets £10, £50, whatever it is. Instead, think about things which are going to drive that social well-being agenda a little bit further. Let everyone go on a team event, for example. So everyone's going out to the cinema, to the theatre, or for team drinks, etc. And let the technology be useful in that it can send out the invitations for those events as well. One other area of adding a little bit of fun here that technology can use is through the form of scratch cards. So in this particular, this is an awards list that someone's received, and you can see over there that they've got this scratch card. I'm going to try something here, if I can switch to a website, and we'll just try this over here, see if this works. So here we are. So this is a recognition portal over here, and I might have to log in again. I'll double check. This is Jotica. She's logged into her recognition portal. You can see she's got one scratch card to play. We're just going to play a little game here, just to... not to fill the time, but in fact, I haven't got any time. Okay, very quickly, let's play this game. Anyway, I don't think there's anyone on after me, right? I can just keep going, yeah? No. Okay, no, I won't do that. Okay, so let's have a look here. So Jotica, she's going to click on her awards that she's received, and here you can see she's been given this award here on this date. This is the e-card that she was sent, and sent by email as well, very nice. And she's got to play this scratch card, so we're going to do this live on air. Ladies and gentlemen, pick a colour. Hands up for purple. Look at that, oh my goodness me. Okay, everyone chooses the middle, by the way, just if you're interested, always. So we're going to choose purple, and I'm going to rub this out here, and I can see that it's £25. Okay, so the person knew that it was either going to be 10, 25, or 50, and it's just a fun way of using technology to give that award, or maybe to depress people when they get the £5. But I'm going to switch back, if that's okay, to the other presentation. And here again, when you run these types of programs, it could be scratch cards, it could be that it's monetary value, but of course it doesn't need to be monetary value. It could be rewards that we spoke about before that are pushing those other agendas. They won the Fitbit, they won the gym membership, they won the chef for the night, they won the learning training course, etc. So to sum up, if you get it right, if you successfully implement a recognition program that takes account of your other HR agendas, we strongly believe that you can actually drive those other agendas through the recognition activity in a way that is not really possible with some of the other benefits and employee schemes that you're running. And hopefully you can drive everything from, as we saw, the age and demographics and health and well-being and learning, development and social well-being. And lastly, the intelligent use, again, of bespoke, and really important to have bespoke management reports, will allow you to track all of that activity as well and to audit what's happening through those other HR activities as well, not just the recognition activity. And one last, I keep saying one last, this really is the last, I promise. One last note. This is a bit of a cautionary note. For all of the glamour and the excitement of social recognition technologies, from winners' walls to messaging to chats and social media, etc., we still strongly believe that the best form of social recognition remains good old-fashioned actually socializing with people. Put up some balloons, hand out a card, call out their name in a team meeting, and all of that is offline. So for all the greatness of technology, let's not forget actually that people live in the real world. If you sit next to someone, why are you sending them an e-card? Maybe occasionally speak to them. Maybe they'll even ask for your name one day. And better than a card, that's been typed out, handwrite it. And better than that, hand it out in a team meeting and call out their name and things like that as well. So technology is good, but there's another side to it all. I think that's probably all we've got time for. Thank you.